You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge.
So Dylan, all right, well, nice to meet you, man. So again, these interviews that I conduct are on a topic known as epistemology, which is the study of knowledge.
Okay.
And it's kind of a passion of mine and interest to ask people to identify some belief they have.
Okay.
And then I want to interview you concerning how you arrived at that belief.
Sure.
In other words, how did you determine that that thing, whatever it is true?
Okay.
And so it's an open field as far as what that belief could be. I mean, I've talked to people about religion,
Sure.
politics, ghosts, supernatural, paranormal, just some fact claim about the world, something that you're fairly certain of and that is kind of foundational for you.
Okay.
Do you want to pick something?
I mean, dealer's choice. I can talk religion. I can talk supernatural.
Let's do religion. I like
Okay.
talking about religion. What, anything in particular?
As far as like what I identify as,
Yeah, whatever.
that's such a weird question, and there's so many different titles and belief systems, and I just sit down some days and I think, how did we get to where we are with all these different titles and identifications? And I do believe in the one true God and Jesus Christ. I do, and I was raised Catholic for a first little bit of my life, first long while in my life, and so my parents split, and then my mom, she was previously Methodist, and she was kind of raised me Catholic for my dad, and
Mm-hmm.
after she left my dad, she started to raise me Methodist, and that's when I kind of started to think about it. I was like, I mean, like the structure of the service is a little different in ways, but like even the service, like the bones of the service were kind of the same. Like obviously the Catholic service is a lot more, by the book traditionalist, I guess, which I kind of dig in one sense, and then the Methodist was a little more, I guess, free-formed, like a lot more laid back, and I also really enjoyed that to just, probably the same way that I like the traditional, it's just a different way,
Mm-hmm.
but it all kind of came down to they were set up in a similar way, and they all obviously had more or less the same belief systems, but I guess it's just the way they want, so I was thinking maybe it's just the way they want to conduct their services, and then as I got older, I started paying more attention to just like how there are so many different, ideologies that do value the same core belief system. Just in Christianity, we have so many different, I guess you call them branches or denominations, whatever you want to call them, and I'm not Jewish or Muslim, so I can't speak on their side, but I've got friends in both of those religions who
Mm-hmm.
have kind of said that there's different denominations in those too. And again, I've never been part of that religion, so I can't say like how varied they are, but that's just interesting to me that there's so many different sides of it. We're all, everyone in those groups are kind of base their belief around the same thing, and
Mm-hmm.
I even noticed, as I got closer in the Methodist church growing up, that it seemed almost like the Methodist church was getting split over, modern political opinions that I guess they were kind of relating to religion, like hot button issues that may have been something that the country was talking about that necessarily wasn't religious, but people were throwing religion into it. It's
Okay, so can we focus in on a certain belief so we can get as specific as you want? You mentioned in the beginning you believe in Jesus.
I do, and
Do you want to, if you could state your belief in a sentence, what would it be?
yes, and it's
God exists. Jesus.
my belief is this. My belief is the definition of Christian is to be Christ-like.
Mm-hmm.
Christ lived his life as a good person, loving everyone and being good to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we should all strive to be good to one another,
Okay.
plain and simple.
Okay. How about can you state it in terms of a fact claim? That's a great value.
A fact claim.
Yeah, like as an example, I'm not trying to say
An example, okay.
as well. No, I'm saying as an example, like God exists. Like that would be like, for instance, a fact claim, or
An example that God
or
exists.
no, I'm saying that's an example of a
Okay.
fact claim. So I want you to state your belief in terms of a fact claim that I can ask you more specifically about. So, an example, like God exists, would be a fact claim about the nature of the world, or the Bible is true, or if we were talking about paranormal stuff, ghosts exist, or something like that. Like, state what is your belief at its most basic level about Christianity?
I think I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Because what I want to ask you about is how you determined that thing is true. How you came to establish that this knowledge claim
Sure.
is based in reality.
Well, I think I could answer that easier than making a sentence, if that's okay.
Yeah, however you want.
Really, man, you can say, oh, you were raised like that. That's part of your culture. It's your heritage. You were raised believing that Christ exists. You were raised in a church, and that's why you believe the things you believe. And sure, I mean that obviously, I guess, put that core value in my head as a child. Sure, but to tell you the truth, man, I've kind of, for better or for worse, over the years, I'm in graduate school now, and when I was an undergrad, I kind of noticed, churches not being what I think they should be, and not being the kind, loving places they should be, and a lot of people feeling condemned and judged in these places that they should feel loved. And so, to tell you the truth, I've kind of, again, for better or for worse, I've kind of stepped away from the whole organized religion side of it, just because I think that it's gotten too much away from the core value of just love everyone, and my faith is strong as ever, I still believe, and I want to share my belief. I don't think that, the belief of Christ is going to get spread by people Bible thumping or, condemning others. That's not right, man. You're supposed to be preaching love. And like I said earlier, Christ lives as a good person. And I think just being a good example, I think if we emit that light, if we just are nice to everyone, and people are going to realize, you got something going on and I want to know what it is. And then they're going to start asking questions. You can be like, hey, man, like, I believe in God and Jesus. And the reason why I believe in God and Jesus is because there's been so many, you can call them what they are. I call them miracles, plain and simple, that I've experienced. A couple weeks ago, I got run off the road by a street sweeper in a storm into a ditch. And, my car just spun out and spun out and spun out. And I just remember going into that ditch thinking, this is it. I'm flipping. Like, my car is going to flip. And somehow I spun around and spun around and spun around and just got stuck in the ditch, but my car did not flip. I did not get hurt at all. And
maybe we can focus on that. Would you say that's a pretty basic reason why you believe that?
A very basic reason, but yes.
Okay. So do you think you call them miracles, you think these miracles are proof that, of what exactly?
Someone's watching over for us, man.
Okay. So maybe God exists.
God, yeah.
Okay. What is it about these miracles that you mentioned, like the car accident? What is it about these events that you think establishes the truthfulness of the statement God exists?
The fact that we're supposed to believe that He does love us and that He did create us and that He's looking out for us. And if that's the case, then coincidences like that don't happen. All freak occurrences or whatever. My best friend's, special forces right now, and he's on deployment all the time, and he comes back with the craziest stories, and I'm just like, man, if something's not, keeping watch out for you, man, then I don't know. That's like, you should have been blown up so many times, and you're back here in one piece, all connected, all wired right in the head still, and jeez, man, like, I tell you what, every time he deploys, like, I have a hard time remembering to pray sometimes, but every time he deploys, man, I think I pray every night those few months he's gone, and I'm not saying because I pray is why he comes back okay, but...
So it sounds like the fact that, like, you survived your car accident and things like your friend coming back from deployment, and, like, that these outcomes serve as proof that there just must be
There's gotta be
God.
something
What
better out there, man.
what if those events turned out differently? Let's say you didn't survive your car accident, or let's say your friend didn't return from deployment. If him returning from deployment and you surviving your car accident serves as proof that God exists, would you not surviving your car accident or your friend not returning from deployment serve as this verification or?
No, I don't think so, man. And a couple weeks ago, a good friend of mine, his older brother, was walking home from work in North Carolina and got hit by a car and killed. He was just walking across. It was no fault on anyone's side. It was just bad situation, and the poor lady that hit him was completely innocent. She was just on her way to work. Night she was at a hospital, and again, no one's fault, no one's to blame, but it's terrible. It's a tragedy that this very young person, I think he was like maybe 30, 31, and at the funeral, I never met this guy. I just know his brother really well. At the funeral, they were talking about, all he did with his short life, and it was just this incredible things that he did. Like, he lived life to the fullest, and I'm like, man, this guy had a good life, but why would that get shut down so short? So I get what you're saying. Like, you're like that, and I think maybe it's because I've got such a strong core belief that I can say this, and I pray that those that's faith might not be as strong as mine can eventually learn to feel this way. But
I'm just wondering logically,
everything happens for a reason.
I'm just wondering logically if those events establish the truthfulness of the claim God exists.
No, for sure.
Why wouldn't the reverse of those events serve to disestablish the truthfulness of the claim?
I do get what you're saying, and I think, like I said, everything happens for a reason, and typically it's hard to do, but if you step back and just wait a minute and look, something good usually comes out from those bad things. My buddy's brother getting killed, he got killed in a crosswalk that apparently in that city, there'd been, I forgot what the stats on friends told me, there were a ridiculous amount of vehicular deaths, all accidental, of course, and, the city was finally like, after this, they're like, maybe we should build, I'm not sure what you call them, there's over there by the hospital, like the crosswalks that go over the street, so people, so they're apparently like getting funding to build that now. Like, apparently that was like from what I was told, like the final nail in the coffin, so to speak. So something good is happening from that. That, like, it's terrible that his life was taken so short, but supposedly from what I've been told, the city's now finally taking measures to stop that from happening there again. And so I mean, everything happens for a reason, and he, like they said in the funeral, he lived a not very long, but he lived a very fulfilling life, and it's terrible that it was cut so short, but in the end, it's leading to something better.
Let's say it turned out that something like this happened and it didn't lead to something better. So the crosswalk wasn't built, or he ended up not having led a fulfilling life, or like if no good were to come of it, would that serve as evidence against this belief that God exists?
For me, no, I don't think so. And I think because I've come to realize, even if you don't see something good happening, or something that should be happening doesn't mean that it is. And I can give you, a tiny example of that. I substitute teach in some of the high schools in Santa Rosa, and earlier this week I was substituting at a high school, and there's this one kid that I guess is a bully, and he like pushed down one of the weaker kids, and this was a PE class, and I was subbing for one of the coaches, and the other coach was still there, and so the other coach who's full-time there obviously handled the situation, but the kid that was pushed, he was like, why aren't you doing anything, and the coach was trying to tell him, no, as soon as the bell rings, I'm going to go like to the dean that's been handling this troubled kid, and what makes this, like, and she finally told him, because he just, I guess he wasn't getting the satisfaction of seeing something happening, and he just couldn't believe, like, no one cares, and finally she said, just because you don't see something happening doesn't mean that there's something that's going to happen. So I don't know, man, you can't go through life, hanging on to all the negative. You got to look forward and just know that there is good in the world, and, if we all just hang tight and believe that something good's going to happen, man.
It sounds like maybe there's a deeper reason why you believe God exists. Because the reason that you gave was miracles, and you cited you surviving your car accident, your friend returned from deployment, and stuff like that as evidence why your belief is true. But it sounds like you're saying even if those things didn't happen, in other words, if you didn't have evidence like you surviving your car accident or your friend, that even if you didn't have that evidence, it sounds like you would continue to maintain your beliefs. So that makes me think maybe there's something deeper than the miracles serving as the foundation for why you think this thing is true. Is that correct?
To some degree, I guess, man. I guess, I think I'm at an advantage here because I was raised around the religion, so that kind of presented me with the opportunity to kind of open my eyes to the possibility of there being something good out there, and that did obviously put me in an advantage to someone who was born not being raised around that, never having that concept presented to them, and having to hopefully discover that on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you could say that put me in an advantage, but I've met people who weren't raised around it and just found it on their own, and I think they feel the same way I do. As far as what the core concept is, man, maybe it'll sound crazy to some people, but I just know.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't know how to explain that. There are definitely times where, your beliefs and your faith are challenged. Like you said, when something terrible happens and you can't figure out why. Like, everyone says everything happens for a reason, everything happens for a reason. People tell you that because they're trying to help you cope, and you're just like, what's the reason? Like, I'm not seeing it. And there's been so many times, probably more times that than the good in my life where that has happened. And I've sat down and I've been like, what's up with this? Like, there probably have been more times like that than the other. And I don't know. It all comes down to somehow I stop and at the darkest point, there's a glint of light that just kind of reminds me, like, things are going to be okay.
Okay. So it sounds like even digging deeper than the miracles as evidence,
mm-hmm.
You said deeper than that is a more fundamental reason, and you describe that reason as I just know.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
It is. It's almost like, I don't know, it's like you can't, there's not like a tangible reason in front of you sometimes when you're really, really challenged, but it's almost like God puts this idea in the back of your head just out of nowhere, like, hey, snap out of it, like, just, your bones aren't broken, man, stand up and keep walking.
Mm-hmm. If we had somebody who came to the opposite conclusion that you hold,
sure.
Different conclusion, the exact opposite,
okay.
Let's say God doesn't exist,
sure.
Or Christianity is not true, or something like that. And the reason they give is, I just know God doesn't exist. I just know Christianity is not true. I just know the Bible is not true. And they give that as their reason. Would they be justified in holding their belief? Would that be a sufficient reason to establish the truthfulness of their claim?
I think they would be justified because that is what they believe. But, I think that I would personally, in my head be thinking, man, you're fighting it, like, and I'm sure they could say that's hypocritical, you're fighting the idea that it's not, they could just as easily tell me, man, you're fighting the facts, man, like, here's the facts, like, nothing's real, yada yada yada, you're making these crazy claims, and you're fighting the truth. And I mean, again, that's probably hypocritical because I'm saying, nah, man, like, you're ignoring these so obvious signs that there is something. So it's weird because I think we'd both say the same thing and have the same opinion of the other.
So if you're giving the reason I just know, and they're giving the reason I just know, how do we determine who's utilizing this method of citing that I just know something correctly?
I don't think we can. I think I know what I know, and I can try to justify it or explain it. But I think it all comes down to what I was saying about, I can argue with this person, and say they're wrong, and that's just going to turn them away from the idea and make them dig deeper into their beliefs, and or I could just, be like, hey man, you got your thing, I got mine, that's cool, and we could just be friends. And I would hope that over time, they would see maybe something tragic happen to me and me rise up from it, or something tragic happen to them and me be there to comfort them and just be that example without having to Bible bash and tell them that they're wrong. And and I would hope that in time they would be like, you do have something going on, maybe something, and maybe they'd start to open their mind. that's the thing with, you know, we're talking about religion, man, and I guess I should have started with, there's religion and there's just faith.
How are you defining faith?
Faith is just the belief. I think religion is the practices and, I guess, ceremonies. And
is faith basically saying I just know? Is that
at the I guess the bare bones reason, like bottom of it? Yeah, sure, I just know, but and trusting, you know, like which I guess that all goes hand in hand. Yeah, that faith is just I just know, and it's really hard to, you know, I can't just, you know, MLA format cite my reasonings, you know, and present a bibliography and all that junk. You know, but I wish I could. That'd make it easier.
Do you think that faith is a reliable method of arriving at a truth claim?
I don't think you get to the truth claim by faith. I think you get to that truth claim, and at that truth claim you discover faith, and faith helps you keep that truth claim.
Can you say that again?
I don't think that you find faith and that leads you to your truth. I think you find that truth, and through that truth you gain faith, and through that faith you keep that truth.
Are you using faith as a way of determining that that thing is true?
I wouldn't say as a way of determining, just as a way of reminding myself that it's true.
So what method are you using to determine that it's true?
Like I said, just, you know, just sitting back and looking around and being like, you know, things are the way they are for a reason, and I guess you could call that faith, I guess. I wouldn't. I'd just call that, I guess, awakening or realizing, you know, soul searching, so to speak. But I don't know if that makes sense, but.
So just by sitting back and saying everything must happen for a reason?
I think that makes it sound a little simpler than it is, but yeah.
Okay. How did you determine that what you just described for me is a reliable method of arriving at truth? If the act of sitting back and saying everything must happen for a reason and making that statement, like, what is it about that makes that thing true?
Hey, what's up?
Yeah.
Who are you? I was like, who is that guy with the gorgeous hair? If you were Micah, you guys win that category.
Thanks.
Bye.
Sorry about that. What was the question?
I guess what I'm trying to get at here is that when it comes to epistemology, one of the big things that I like to talk about is the reliability of whatever method you use to determine that something is true. And so maybe we can come back around to, can you just simply describe once again, what method are you using to determine the truthfulness of the claim God exists? How are you determining that statement is true? What's your method?
I just see him everywhere. Every little bit of good in the world, or anytime something comes full circle, even if it is something bad, you know, just seeing those series of events that just led to this ultimate outcome. You know, he's everywhere if you look for him.
Okay. Would you call that what you just described faith, or
yeah,
if you had to put it in a word?
I guess I would.
So again, I come back to, is faith a reliable means of determining whether or not something is true? Would you say that it is, or it's not, or?
I guess for me it is.
Okay, and how did you determine its reliability? How did you determine that faith reliably leads to accurate results?
I just sat back and looked, and I saw, you know, I saw things that, you know, again, you can call them miracles, you can call them coincidence, whatever you want to call them, but for me, I just saw what could only be called, you know, an act of God.
Is it possible for somebody to take that very approach and yet be mistaken? Like, so let's say somebody came to the conclusion that by just looking around that Allah exists, so not the Christian God.
Sure.
but they came to the conclusion that Allah exists, or any other God.
Okay.
Would their reasoning be valid? Would their conclusion be valid if they're using the same approach as you? In other words, they used faith, and because of them simply looking around, they've come to the conclusion that absolutely I know Allah exists, or this other God exists, or this other faith system is correct. Would they be would they be correct in the conclusions that they arrived at? Because given the fact that they use this reliable method.
I mean, who am I to question their beliefs? That's not my place. You know, if they, you know, the Bible says that we should share the light of God and we should convert, and I of course do believe that we should share God's light, but who am I to say that you're wrong? You know, you've got to walk your own path, and if I can inspire you to find happiness and hope, you know, if anyone's ever seen South Park, there's an episode where, you know, one of the 4 kids is Jewish and the other three aren't, and there's probably a million episodes on religion, but there's one where they're talking about, you know, Jesus, and that's right, and the Jewish kid goes home to his parents, and they're like, man, what if we're wrong? And his parents go, well, they could be wrong. He's like, but what if we are? And his dad says, you know, it's not about the title of what you believe, it's just about being a good person now. And I think that, you know, coming from a ridiculous show like South Park, I think that speaks miles, man. Mm-hmm. It's just about being a good person, you know. And I think that, again, I've never studied the what's the Quran that the Muslims read, I believe is their book. Mm-hmm. I've never studied the Quran. I've never studied much into Islam or the Muslim faith, but, you know, from what I've gathered, a little bit that I know, and a little bit that I've heard from people that have studied or people that are practitioners of that faith, that they kind of, that they're at their core structure, from what I've been told, and again, I could be wrong, and I hope I'm not offending anyone by saying, well, this is what I've heard, is also, you know, just be a good person. You know, God wants us to be good, Allah wants them to be good.
How would we test the reliability of faith as a method? And so, for instance, if we had a thermometer,
sure,
and we wanted to test its reliability, I suppose there's some kind of test we can run with it. Maybe I can take my temperature once, and then 2 minutes later take it again, and 2 minutes after that take it again, and see how consistent. Like we might have certain methods that we can test this method of
sure,
measuring temperatures by. When it comes to faith as a method of establishing a truth claim, how might we test its reliability? Is there a way of testing its reliability?
I don't think there is, man. I think you just have to know, and to know, I think you have to, yeah, you can be shown it, but you really got to find it on your own. You can't have someone say, you believe this, not because I told you this. Mm-hmm. You can have someone say, hey, this is where I'm at, this is how I got to where I'm at, and then the person they tell can reflect on that, and in time, you know, have their own awakening and be like, there's something to that, you know? But there's no scientific way to test it, man, and I think, I don't see why we would waste our time and energy trying to test something that we'll never fully, because to be honest, man, like, not religion, but faith, we'll never fully understand that. We won't. We just gotta believe what we believe and just trust in that. I don't think there is a way to test it. There's a way to show it, there's a way to justify, in your words, why you believe it. But as far as like a scientific test, like, new scientific study proves without a doubt that Jesus is real, like, it's not gonna happen until the day that he comes down to earth and shows himself. Which, whether you believe that or not, that goes back to the religion in the Bible. But no, man, faith, you can't. I don't think you really can, in a scientific, factual, you know, I don't think you can explain it that way. I think you can just say, hey, you know, you want to know what I believe? That's cool. Here's what I believe, and here's kind of the road that I've been on that led me to this, and why I continue to believe this. But unfortunately, I don't think we'll ever be able to fully explain it in a way that, like, you know, drop an apple, oh, gravity. I don't think we'll ever be. I don't think we as humans will ever be able to do that. But that's okay. All we can do is live the way that we believe we're supposed to live, and live the, you know, have that hope and that happiness, and try to share that with everyone, and through that make the world a better place, just with love.
Is there any other area in life where you would recommend using this method of faith for determining whether or not something is true, other than religion?
I think with faith, it's all that, I think this is where it belongs. That method is exclusive to
religion.
Yeah.
And I wonder why is that? Why if it's good to use this method for arriving at a religious claim, why isn't it a reliable method that we might be able to apply in other areas?
I think because other things we can prove, scientifically, and I don't think we can prove this, and I don't think God wants us to prove it. I think God wants us to just trust in Him and believe. I don't think if we were meant to prove without a doubt that it is what it is, then He would have given us the way to do it.
How would we distinguish between God existing and God not existing?
Again, man, you just gotta believe, and you just gotta believe and show that belief. And like I said, there's no scientific way, so people can say I'm crazy or doubt what I'm saying, and that's okay. That's their opinion, and I hope that through my actions I can show them differently. But no, there's no scientific way to prove it. I'm sorry. I wish there was, but like I said, if we were meant to have a way to prove it, He would have given us a way. I think it's about your journey to find that truth and to walk with it.
Do you think that we should be concerned with having beliefs that comport with reality?
Well, that depends what your opinion of reality is. Yeah.
Okay. And so, if that's the case, do you think do you think that the reliability of the methods we use to establish those beliefs matter?
For faith, no, because you can't. Like I said, I don't think you can prove it. You just gotta figure it out on your own,
Yeah. Cool, Dylan. Well, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, I hope I didn't go in circles and kind of said what I needed to. And
yeah, you said what you thought. So that's all I want, man.
Okay, cool.
That's all I asked for.
Cool.
So I appreciate it, man.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot.
man. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah.